In this video, we're asked to write a method called removeDuplicates that will remove any duplicate numbers in a given list. So for example, we're past this list, and we call our method here upon that list. You can see that the 14, and the additional 8s, and the additional 12s, and the additional 4s and 2s, and the additional 1s have all been removed from the list itself. We do have access to the front of the list, and we also have access to the node's data field and next field here. So we get started. Sorry about that. The type, we're actually not going to be returning anything. We're going to be changing the entirety of the list itself, so it's going to be just considered void. So we're going to say public void remove duplicates. It's not going to take in anything because it's an instance method. We're going to create a reference to the front of the list itself because we want to traverse through the list and see if there's anything we want to remove. We don't want to actually modify the list while we're traversing through it. Otherwise, we end up with an empty list at the end. So we're going to use a while loop here, and we're going to test to see if we have a value to look at for the current. And we also want to check to see that there is another value beyond that that we can also look at. So otherwise, we're just going to break out of the loop. At this point, we need to add a new reference pointer. The reason for that will become very intuitive later on in the video, but basically what we want to do is we want to keep track of a specific number, and then while we have that number that we're looking at, we want to traverse through the entirety of the list and then start making the modifications to see, okay, is this number equal to the 14? No. Move on. Is this number equal to the 14? Yes. Let's then point 8's pointer at 12 so that we just completely eliminate this piece of data right here. So I'm going to add a list node cur. It's going to be set equivalent to the current itself because it's going to be modified as we modify the current values. And actually, at this point, I kind of gave it away, but we're going to actually start making our way through this through the list here. The way we're going to do that is we're going to say, okay, as long as we have a another value to look at beyond the current value that we're looking at, because we want to compare these we want to compare these individual nodes. Yeah, we'll keep going. So what do we want to do at this point? We want to see the equality. And what happens if we see that the current is equivalent to our cur? Well, what we should do at that point is, if equal, we want to modify the list. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to set our current.next to point at the new cur.next.next. Oops, I'm not sure if you guys can see that from here, but so we just assume that our current is pointing here, our cur is right here, and this is our cur.next. So in order to remove the 14, what we need to do is we need to point the 8 at the 12 and just completely skip over the 14, so we get rid of that. So curs.next field is usually this, so cur.next should be equivalent to the cur.next.next, so that we point at the 12. So are we going to code this? We're going to say, okay, if our current data if our current data that we're looking at when we look into the future here is equivalent to the current.data, the number that we're keeping reference to and comparing to, then what we want to do is we want to say, okay, cur.next is now going to be cur.next dot next so that we can skip over the repeated value there. Otherwise, in this case, we want to move forward in our little loop here. Otherwise, we'll just end up going back and forth through this, and we'll get eventually get a Stack Overflow, which is not what we want. So we're going to say, okay, in order to eventually break out of the while loop, we're going to set cur equivalent to the cur.next. So now that we've broken out of that while loop, is there really anything else that we have to do? Yeah, we need to progress further in this loop so we can eventually break out of it. So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to say, okay, our current is going to switch the current.next. And that's it for this video.